when we start the context. When the context exits, the binding breaks. Right? So there are many ways of viewing an object, depending on the roles it takes. Many forms of interaction for an object. Many forms, polymorphos. This is how we do polymorphism in object-oriented programming. It is a mapping of roles onto objects of some class. Therefore, we don't really use inheritance here. Now, we can, but it's structural inheritance a la abstract data types. Classification inheritance. We all know inheritance is, it makes programs hard to understand. We've gotten rid of that. We made a fairly flat hierarchy, and just it's a role to class association that's bound at runtime. So we are doing here what virtual functions do or deferred methods do in C++ and Java. But we don't need virtual methods. We don't need deferred methods because we have role object binding.
If you view this picture from the object's perspective, the relationship between role and object is just very temporary.
Yes. Yes.
Occasional.
Yes.
But
yes.
For us human beings, that this interaction itself is very, in a sense, stable.
Yes.
And recurring.
Yes. 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 And because it's recurring, there is commonality in time.
So the interaction takes place many times.
Yes.
The same pattern with interaction.
Yes. Yes. It's commonality in time. It's a pattern in time. Now, how many of you are patterns people? And I showed this slide when I was here in January. Everybody thinks that patterns are about structure, about this stuff. No. If you read Alexander carefully, it's about patterns of time. And space just generates patterns in time. So your picture of those stones in the sand generate some patterns in time. Maybe people walking around them? I don't know. So here is a pattern in space, a network, that generates patterns in time.
So interactions themselves form some pattern.
Yes.
It's something formed by the word form.
Kata.
Kata.
分からなかったんで訳してもらっていいですか。どういう意味ですか。
いやこちらとこちらオブジェクトがあって、それがパターンでどういうふうにこのパターンと結びつけっていうのはすごくこう一時的なものであって、だけど同じこのパターンのこういう相互作用っていうのが何回も起こると。で人間はどちらかというとこれがどうこれはこう認識してるんだけど、こっちについてこうに名前をつけて、相互関係を認識したり理解してる。だからこっちの方が実はよりこう重要なのかもしれない。
そうパターンはシーケンスっていう時間を含んでる。
そうそう、それでそのパターンですね、シーケンスを含んでる。
順番がある。
I just-
I would, we are breaking his book and we understand that pay close attention to the pattern of the behavior. Pattern
Yes.
of time behavior.
Yes.
And he questioned the pattern of the buildings or structures to generate
Yes.
pattern of behavior.
Yes, absolutely. I did not understand that until about 10 years ago. Because, and I was talking to Richard Gabriel. I said, Alexander doesn't really understand time. And he said, oh, yes he does. Read this, read it again. And it really opened my eyes. And then I had to read Alexander twice more. And it's absolutely true.
So this is the pattern of the meaning.
Yes.
Behavior of the pattern, the interaction, pattern of interaction.
Yes. I just realized something. You are DCI people?
Yes.
So you know what a habit is.
Yeah.
I should have called it a kata.
ハビットってユースケースのその
Shit.
部分で、ユースケースの共有部分なんです。あるユースケースと別のユースケースの中で共通なものをログインするとか、そのログインする自体は価値がないんだけども、それは共通だからハビット。ログイン is not the use case, but it because it occurs many times.
Yeah.
So we call them habit.
Yeah.
ああ、なるほどね。
It's just a kata. Yep. It's a recurring form in time.
ハビットってその多分コプリンさん作ったことはyou coined the word habit.
Yeah. And Trivia liked it. So
Here's what I didn't understand, Jim. Just a quick. This is what I know
That's
when I'm still DCI. So if this is T0 in time, the T1 and Tn, this may evolve. So those may not exist. My mental models evolve. I could never understand how DCI in its current, form may capture the time evolution of my mental models.
well, that's possible, but that picture itself captures all time for the lifetime of the context, from T0 to Tn. Now, there may be another level where these graphs evolve. I don't know. I'm not sure what that means. It's an interesting.
I think
It's an interesting trichotomy.
what might be going on actually is this is actually an emergence state. It's an averaged probability
Yes.
of a mental model
Yes.
that is currently is my world.
Yes.
But to give rise to this, I might have many observations that give rise to this. So this is actually a probabilistic concept.
I mean, it's possible, and then there's, the question here is, what is the supporting psychological research? Because everything I've read from Kay in talking about Piaget is that these things are relatively static. The children learn them and store them away, and then they recall them when a situation pattern matches for them and they need to apply them. And of course we don't understand in detail how they're, to kind of word, transmogrified to That's a real English word from Calvin transmogrified. To fit the situation. I don't think that's well formalized and maybe even not well understood. But I mean, I don't find it in Piaget, I don't find it in K, but I mean, it's an interesting thing to postulate and to explore. It's kind of another level of reflection. I mean, this is already reflection. This is the system modifying itself. I'm modifying the role-object relationships. So already have a weak form of reflection. I gave a keynote on this at Splash several years ago. And what you're talking about is another level of reflection, a deeper level of reflection, another level of meta. Interesting.
The only constant mental model that I have is the first girlfriend that I believe I had back in the day when I was maybe 5 years old. This is the only image that is constant. Everything else, if I'm driving from Colorado to California, the mental images of my interpretations of the road, they evolve.
Well, maybe we have a different sense of mental model, because your mental model of brushing your teeth is probably pretty fixed.
It changes. It depends on the tool I buy, because I bought an electrical brush.
But that's a different context.
This is a different.
But that's a different mental model. That's a different use case.
This is probably true.
But I don't think it's within this use case. We've had a lot of discussion in DCI. Should we allow people to subclass contexts? So you have a base context for the normal toothbrush, and then a derived context for the electric toothbrush. And we decided on no, and the reasons are in the log, and maybe even in the fact.
コンテキストのサブクラッシングはノーというアイデアをまあ近いかもしれないけどノーっていうふうに当時の議論ではしたありえない。
もともとの質問としてはそのメンタルモデルっていうのが確率的であるのかどうかみたいなのがあって確率的であるとするとこの DCI っていうのはどうなるんですかっていう話を投げかけていってそれについてはいい質問ですね。かなり新しい学説になるんじゃないでしょうかという話とか多読するような学説がメンタルモデル上で何かあるかどうかみたいなことについて。
So I think we want to wrap up pretty soon. Let me just ask a question. I don't know when I will be back. I mean, the tradition for me to be back will probably be October, November. And maybe I can set something up with my sponsors to be back here earlier. But I don't know yet. Would there be enough interest in having a 2-day DCI class here? That I could go to Aguilago, who's sponsors things like the DCI class, that you would register for. It's a paid class. It helps subsidize me coming here to Japan. Would there be enough interest in this to have a class? Now, by all means, still have these evening seminars, and I want to give freely to the community. But to really go into the disciplines, to teach people, to practice programming, to do something very, very hands-on. Is there interest in doing that kind of thing? So you think there is? So I mean, and maybe even we set it up. Maybe we even do it in Osaka. I mean, that'd be great. I haven't been to Osaka in a long time. But we can talk about this if you think there's a possibility, and then plan ahead and do something.
DCI の2日間の優秀なコースなんで実際にハンズオンとかも含めて実際にやってみるとかそういう期間も含めてやるっていうコースを 提供するとしたら、どのぐらいの人がそれに対して出席したいと思ってるかっていうのを知っておきたいと。むしろ夜のコールセッションもやるんだけども、それとは別にそういうトレーニングコースみたいなのをやるとしたらどうだっていうので、ぜひ出たいという人は手を挙げてください。
Okay, so there's some interest. And I mean, I need to figure out whether, I mean, maybe we just set this up ourselves. Maybe we do this through Adelago, which is a company that I usually work with. I mean, maybe we can even get Kiro-san over there to wake up and we do something together with a tractor. I don't know. I mean, you're mainly in the agile space. This is more the architecture space. But if you want to do something in the architecture space, that could be fun too. Because I really think Adelago isn't really is naturally not been in the market space to market this kind of thing. I don't think they have exposure to this, to the programming folks, to the market. It's mainly to the kind of project management oriented crowd.
スポンサーというか、実施する主体としてどういう会社いいのかというのを検討したんじゃないという話で、アギエルゴっていうのはそのスクラムの方のセッションを多分お勧めされている会社だけど、どっちかというとプロジェクト管理とかそちらの方が